We're going to look at and show you just a number of items and important papers that I have from my mother, Valma's life, starting with some beautiful embroidery. And that was simply because one of the things my mother did during her life was always handwork of some description. There was always something beside her ready to go. And one of the things that popped up quite often were these what we call triplets. And that were a duchess set with a large piece and two small pieces. And Mum's dressing table had a large centre and two smaller sides. So there was the three pieces went on her dressing table. And I use them all the time. The ones that I have several of them, several sets, because I have a long dressing table and the three of them look beautiful on there. So I get to see this gorgeous embroidery as often as I like.
Can you, while examining one of the small ones, take us through the embroidery?
Oh, what do you mean, the sort of stitches and things? Actually, this is the one to have a look at, all these beautiful little French knots, where
Okay.
you to get each petal on these, I think it's meant to be a rose bush. The thread goes round and round and round and round the needle, can be up to 10, 15 times, and it's quite a thing to concentrate on. The other thing that Mum was very good at was doing behind these flowers was doing lots of little packing threads, so that when you eventually do the satin stitch, it comes up off the fabric. Down the side here are lots and lots and lots of tiny stitches that are called seed stitching. So that's really, you have to concentrate hard to do that. Now, Grandma used to bring these things back up from Brisbane. She used to shop there and she'd bring them up to our place. And I think Grandma would have done the crochet and Mum did the embroidery on most of the items that I have, because that was what they liked to do together. And as well, just for comparison, there were a lot of other things got embroidered as well. I hope you can see that one all right. This is a little tray cloth. What's more, a sandwich tray cloth, because it was the fashion to have a long tray at which you put your beautiful little sandwiches. And having an embroidered sandwich tray cloth was quite the thing.
Do you have a sandwich tray for an example, or do we?
I have a couple, but they're not really posh. If you ever get to me, you might get that. I mean,
do you know that recently? Well, not very recently. I found out that POSH is an acronym.
It is port out, starboard home.
For passage to India.
Absolutely.
How relevant.
Completely relevant.
To these doilies.
Yes.
Grandma's doilies. That should be the subtitle for this episode, Grandma's doilies.
I had thought to save this till last. It's a pillowcase or a cushion, no, not a pillowcase, a cushion cover, embroidered by Mum. Unfortunately, it's when I've had it for a long time, but it's all the time I've had it, it's had these stains of age. It could be emerge as something good.
A professional dry cleaning service
interested
in sponsoring our podcast could contact us if you think you can handle that.
Actually, I do know how to do it. I'd have to check with my friend Robin, because she and I actually redid and got back up to usable looking whole lot of embroideries for one of the old homes that's on display at Maleny. But the thing with this particular item,
a heritage home.
With this particular item, there's been hiccups with the crochet around the edge, and the crochet's been done with pearl cotton, so to match it now would be quite tricky. But looking at this one, the poppy is exquisite. There is no other word for it. It's just beautifully, beautifully done.
It is, and it represents, I would assume, quite a lot of time. Would you like to make an estimate? How many hours?
I would say if she just sat down and did the poppy, it could be 4 or 5 sessions of a couple of hours at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's a lovely little dragonfly over in the corner. So So there's the sewing part. Now we're going. This is. I haven't put things in strict order, but it'll be interesting to look. When Mum was in 1937, she would have been 15, and her mother gave her an autograph book.
For all those opera visits and is it called a visit if you go to the opera, or do you promenade to the opera? How do you go?
I've not
Like, it
really been
depends
an
on how
opera
you get
goer.
there, but
So she signed at the front there, Valma Wright, 11 Broadway Street, Red Hill, Brisbane, and the book is inscribed
well,
with
you have
love
to have an
from
autograph
Mother.
book if
That's
it's
Laura
Broadway
May.
Street.
Sorry. With love from Mother, 19th of July, 1937, and the 19th of July was Mum's birthday.
Would you like to get, if you want to look more inside the book and
I'm
read
going
the
to.
text, we will have to adjust the camera.
Oh, was going to read what was there so that the camera doesn't really matter.
Okay, well,
Okay.
go ahead.
This is what her mother put in the book for her. I counsel thee, if thou hast a trusty friend, go and see him often, because a road which is seldom trod gets choked with brambles and high grass. So I think it's sort of,
Sounds like a quote from Voltaire.
it could be a quote from anybody.
Like,
there you
like
go.
Dr. Pangloss talking to Candide and giving him advice. Wow, what's this?
Now, when I was, I think 10 or so, no, yes, when I was 10, Mum gave me her autograph book, and there's a few autographs in here from friends of mine when I was a kid, but this is an interesting page because it has all the people who were at the family reunion in Sydney for my nana and granddad's 50th wedding anniversary. That's my dad's parents. So, and everybody signed it and put their date of birth or the year of their birth. So that I find quite interesting. There's another page in here which I can't just open it up and find it, but I should have done before. There's also a page that has the autographs of some Arab football team that was in Brisbane. So that's an interesting thing to look for if you ever have that autograph book in your hand.
Or what Arabic? Hang on, what football team?
Yes.
What kind of football?
Soccer. Soccer. It was always called soccer. Okay. Now this particular book, you can see it has V.M. Wright, so that's Mum, notes of lessons. So this was when she was at Teachers College. And here's the way we had to, and I had to do the same when I went to Teachers College many years after Mum, how to set out your lesson, plan your lesson, what you're going to do. So the matter, what you're looking at, the methods you were going to use, what were your aims, how you were going to get there, what things you needed.
Like a science report.
Yes, but it was to tell you how to teach your lesson. There you go. Summary will consist of finished copy and illustrations of various points, and that's somebody's initials who obviously was, I would say, marking her or watching her teach. Because when you were a student teacher, you wrote all that out. Then you expected to remember it because your supervising teacher would have your book and watch your work. So, and then after that, there were samples. The rest of the book has some beautiful pages like this. Poems were there, and I also have a book somewhere, I think, of mine, because we had to collect poetry as well. And
I think we should adjust the camera for that.
Better?
Yes.
Yeah. So we used to get the poems from when I was at college. It wasn't from the English, the lecturer who was teaching you how to teach English, but from the art of speech teacher. And the idea was you collected rhymes and ditties and so on that the children could learn to say and learn to speak properly.
Not sure whether we have a blurry camera lens or just...
Oh, the
faded text.
Oh, well, yes, it's difficult text, and the paper isn't white anymore. But all these little drawings, Mum would have drawn them. That was one of the things that she did.
The art is reminiscent of Little Golden Books, honestly.
Yes,
It's
yes,
that was the cartooning
Yeah.
style of the time.
I think you're right. Here we go. Yeah, there's a lot of lovely poems. There's pages and pages of it. Ooh, and there's a little pull-out one called The Mole.
I think that deserves its own special examination later.
Oh, yes, yes. Anybody who's into school or teacher training in those days, yes. Now, can you see all of that, or
No longer. Hang on.
so lift it up a little bit? Happy? Okie dokie. Now, this album is written on the front. Gordon Grant Gilbert, killed in action in France, September the 3rd, 1916.
Oh,
Okay. Age 19 years. Given to Valma Wright in memory of by her grandfather, Arthur Gilbert, September the 3rd, 1935, with love. So
can you explain that a bit?
this bit,
Yes.
well, Gordon Grant Gilbert was Laura May's younger brother, who was killed in action in France in the First World War, and his father, who was Arthur Gilbert, put this album together in memory of his son, and gave it to his granddaughter.
Wow, that's
And
pretty heart-wrenching.
it
So
is.
what is it? It's a
Now,
collection
all
of
these cards
these
are
cards.
cigarette cards.
Yes.
So if you bought cigarettes, you got the cards in the packets.
Oh. So do you think he might have gotten them from his
I
son?
would I
Like,
would say
maybe they traded
that
them
anybody who
in.
smoked would have had.
Yeah.
He would have said, "Well, I'll
It
have
would have been just
have
a
your
consistent
cards." And there
feature.
were obviously sets of them. Let's put them together. There's a whole heap coming up with
I
birds.
can see further along in the album. There's people's faces.
Mm-hmm. There's aeroplanes, dirigibles, hot air balloons. If I put my glasses on, I can see who these famous people might be.
I think
No, it's just the name of the cigarettes. It's not the name of the people.
you have to actually know their faces.
You'd have to know
Wow.
who they were.
They look like aviators, and there's some.
Yeah. Some of them have explanations, like this one says so and so cigarettes collecting letters from the pillar box. But that's one of those things that you need to sit down with it on your lap and very carefully go through it, because as you can see, it's rather not in the
and missing some,
best of states anymore.
That is actually quite an artifact, and
Absolutely.
requires its own session again.
Yes. Whether my problem with these things often is, do you leave them in the state they're in and just make them tidy, or do you try and mend? And that's one of the things I watch the Antiques Roadshow for.
Well,
Yeah. Here's another album, and this one Mum had rescued herself. She's put contact on it to save it. And she's used a typewriter. Miss Valma M. Wright, Broadway Street, Red Hill, Brisbane. And this one has, I don't know what you call these, stickers. Okay. Beautiful collections of stickers and artistically arranged by Mother. There was people. Then here we have shells. Thanks. Cartoony characters or storybook characters. Right?
no. Okay.
Christmas things.
What ages and for how long do you think she might have collected these?
Well, since it's under...
She might have been 44 and
Well, it's actually quite interesting because all these are are dateable. You know, these would be between the wars and all the different sorts of medals you could win. Birdies. And these would have been not cut out, they'd been push out things. So you'd get a sheet and they'd be stamped there and you could push them out. A lot of birds. Oh, obviously doves were fairly popular. Whether you actually bought the sheets or whether they came with things that you bought, I don't know. Don't ever remember asking. Love the turkey. And there's more Christmas things. A St. Nicholas. I remember.
Can we go back a bit and just appreciate how terrifying he is?
Yeah. Would you rather get a present from St. Nicholas or Santa Claus?
He's got two very lifelike child dolls hung from his belt.
Yes.
Just to point that out. Anyway, that's hilarious. Keep going.
But when I remember looking at this often when I was young, and this particular picture of the pansies, it was something that I found really I like looking at it.
Captured it.
Yes.
Very well.
Puppy dogs.
And there's extra page.
A spare page in case you want to do
more
some
stickers.
more. Some more odds and sods. And these ones have glitter on them. So, and a few extra page. Oh, goodness me, we'll have to go and start
we have
collecting.
to collect more.
The story of Little Red Riding Hood and the story of, who was the one who went to sleep? The Seven Dwarfs?
Sleeping Beauty.
Sleeping Beauty.
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Snow White, yes, there's little dwarfs there. Here we go again. Cinderella.
So is this like a revival of the Hans Christian Andersen Brothers Grimm tales that was happening? Because it happens every now and then.
Yeah. This would have been the Brothers Grimm stuff in the early 30s, in the 1930s.
Circulate through the collective consciousness the way they do.
And this is the one that page that gets me. Now, there's a Santa Claus.
More faces. A less terrifying St. Nicholas.
But what gets me about this page is that it has Queen Elizabeth, Prince Philip, and Prince Charles and Princess Anne. Which, I mean, they couldn't have had. Prince Charles.
Okay.
Prince Charles is the same age as me. I think he's a few months older than me.
the? Oh, it's a duplicate. Sorry.
Yes, it's like a duplicate of the Queen and duplicate of Prince Philip. But as I say, Prince Charles is same age as me. I think he's a few months older. So, and that photo or that picture, he'd have to have been, would you say 2? So 49. So this puts these ones in the early 50s, which is interesting. And all I can think of is that Grandma must have had them at some stage, and she brought them up to Mackay, and Mum's put them in here for safekeeping and recollections. But again, it's a bit like the other album. It's worth sitting down quietly with it on your lap and having a jolly good look. Now, we'll have a couple of little artefacts that are of interest.
Oops.
Mum and Dad were married for quite a long time, and when they had their 50th anniversary, they had a party, which unfortunately I didn't get to. And those of us who didn't get to the party got a little box made by Mum and Carla. And Carla did the writing on the front, and inside was a piece of cake, which I think we ate. Or else. So that's just living with me because I have it.
It's gone by now.
Yep, it's gone off by now. I think we ate it. We may not have.
No, I'm sure you did.
I'm sure. Yeah. You reckon we did?
Yep, it was cake. It was
Now, this, to the uninitiated, might just look like a little cheap cane basket, which in all reality it probably is.
In fact, it has a secret.
It has a secret. It's one half.
It transforms into right?
It's one half of a present that Mum was given when she was, I think she said about 8 or 9, something like that. And this is the washboard, so you can wash your clothes. And this is the basket to put your clothes in. Not your own, of course, your dolly ones. So it's a dolly washboard and a dolly basket. Now, I'd never...
So when would she have received this
probably
quote, gift, unquote?
Because she was born in 1922, so probably before 1930.
Okay.
Anyway, the little basket somehow or other ended up with me a long, long time ago. And for probably the best for 30 years, at least, if not longer. It lived in my household, and I used it as the bread basket on the dining table.
I was
would
hoping you were going to say you used it to wash the doll clothes.
No, gave up the doll. I had to make the doll's clothes. I remember I had a little sister.
I said quote unquote because I was just like, was she? Okay.
That was a beautiful bread basket.
I cannot pretend to understand the circumstances, but that is actually quite incredible.
It was a lovely bread basket. I would just put a serviette in, sometimes a paper one, but a serviette, and then the buns or slices of bread or whatever. It was a lovely way to do bread. But
for its intended uses back in 1930, do you think there would have been a more elaborate dollhouse kind of ecology at a house with...
I don't know, with the little girl who really...
Val and...
She only had herself to play with because her sisters were grown-up ladies at this stage.
Oh, of course.
So, you know, playing with your dolls.
Perhaps there was a singular elaborate doll ecology.
Well, she had her cousin Sybil as well, you know, so I can imagine them playing dolls together. But Mum said she remembered
there must have been a reason.
A reason for?
A reason for the gift. It is a lovely item. It's great
it's one of those things that by being sought, you know, somebody went out deliberately looking for a gift for little Valma.
It is like a miniature version of things that you find when somebody has found an old laundry preserved in amber.
So it's a dolly thing, and I think it's a fabulous artifact. I've never seen or heard of anything like it anywhere else at all.
Because the washboard is made of glass, isn't it?
Yes, it's crystal. It says here, there's actually writing on it, crystal, made in USA.
Interesting. So wow.
Right, now that's all the sort of heavyweight things. We're going now into paperwork. Again, I haven't made things in any particular order, so we're mixing up life and death things here. So don't get distressed. At Mum's funeral service, which was run by the people in the church, family wasn't allowed to do anything actually, which was a bit of a shame. But Mum's, I don't know the name of the poem by William Blake, was one that she really liked, and she wrote it at various places.
We can discover this by entering some of it into a search engine.
All right. In the hour of death, after this life's whim, when the heart beats low and the eyes grow dim. I'll keep reading while you find it. And pain has exhausted every limb. The lover of the Lord shall trust in him.
Okay, well, in order to do this, I'm actually going to have to go grab a phone.
God, I keep talking. Second paragraph. Lord, it belongs not to my care whether I die or live. To love and serve thee is my share, and this thy grace must give. Christ leads me through no darker rooms than he went through before. He that unto God's kingdom comes must enter by this door. My knowledge of that life is small, the eye of faith is dim, but 'tis enough that Christ knows all, and I shall be with him. I always, when I was studying, was in a situation where I had to...
public domain hymn by a man named Richard Baxter from 1681.
There you go. So how come she's got William Blake?
I'm not sure. Lord, it belongs not to my care, from St. Agnes. No, wait, that's a performance, but it's authored by Richard Baxter, 1681, copyrights in the public domain.
So that would be the words copyright, or could be just the hymn, because that used to happen sometimes. Somebody would write music and then somebody else would write the words to go with. And on the back is the printing of, because this is the paper that we were given when we went to the service. It's the Battle Hymn of the Republic, and everybody knows that one. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord, which you can sing with gusto, or you can make it very pathetic. Not pathetic, but soft and gentle.
I'm sure there's a musical term in Italian for the pacing and
there will be,
and meter that you need to use.
Yes.
Make it.
As I said, the family wasn't encouraged to take any part really, in Mum's funeral service, but after being pressured by, her daughters anyway, though we were allowed to give them some words about none of us were allowed to speak, but we could give one of the people who was running the service things to say, and Marty wrote quite a nice little memorial.
What was the stated reason for not letting the family members say a
It
few
was just
words?
the way that church did things, Michelle.
I see. But did that, okay, and it came from, I guess, the parishioner? Or was it just a church policy?
It seemed to be a church policy.
Interesting.
It was interesting because if Marty hadn't written anything down there about the family and things that Mum had done during her life, we wouldn't have got a mention. Which is interesting, isn't it?
It's I think it's called erasure, and it's totally okay to
And now
name
it's
and
called
shame the church,
cancelling,
just like
isn't
you
it?
did with the funeral directors for
Yes.
being quote unquote
Well, they shut
expensive.
the church.
Also, I have to stop using quote unquote.
It's called cancelling now, isn't it?
No, I think that's
Cancel somebody.
well. I think you have to be platformed in order to be cancelled, but
Am I
I
on a
don't
platform?
like. Well, I believe, and this is just a personal belief, that when someone who is close to you passes on, that is, if you wish, being in the pulpit to say a few words at their funeral is part of being platformed. So yes, I guess deplatformed, cancelled, but also if it's a demand from an institution, then I guess it makes
in hindsight, I
concept of a funeral
find
different.
it sad, especially
It
since
is.
in recent years I was given the opportunity to speak at my brother's funeral, and that was a very empowering thing to do.
Exactly. Yep. And I know that because you need to watch it, and I did, and it was. I remember being
And now I'm
frustrated
going all
about
soggy.
the audio. Don't worry, you can remember the audio issues we had just earlier.
Okay, I told you that this is a mixture of life and death, so a copy of Mum's death certificate, for which I was the informant. Down here, they like to know who.
Sounds like
was
a
the informant.
very unsavoury title.
Now, it's really quite important in the full death certificate thing to know who the informant was, especially if you're doing family histories and trying to sort people out, because
Describe
if the informant
why
really
they called...
did.
Thank you.
If the informant really
No,
didn't
who is the
know
informant? What do they
that
do?
person, well, you have
Describe the role.
You have to inform the people, whoever was taking it down. In this case, the person who took it down was the man from the funeral home, I believe, to say who her parents were, where she lived, who she was married to, who her children were, all that stuff. So if you have an informant who actually, never knew that there was a great Uncle George or whatever, people can drop off the family tree because they're not mentioned in death certificates, and you have to find them in other ways. So anyway, I was the informant, and there's all the important information. And there's her 4 children. We had to put names.
What
and
does
ages.
the note bene down the bottom say? What's that for?
Not valid unless bearing the authorised seal and signature of the Registrar General. There you
Okay.
go. That's just in there to keep it safe.
It is interesting that the birth certificates and the death certificates both have the same background of Queensland in the States. With nice consistency.
Oh, this is just another copy of the sheet that we were given at her funeral, but I've used it to hold this, which is a copy of her will. Which was
And
quite
another
simple.
hymn.
Pardon?
And another hymn.
Yes, it's the same one with William Blake. That's in Mum's handwriting. The other one we saw was typed, I think. Oh, to go with that, with her will, I have the death notice from the Bundaberg Times, or Newsmail, I beg your pardon, where every family's listed, and this one from the Courier Mail.
It's nice that you have them, but do you want to read them? Because the text is too small without adjusting the camera.
Okay, how about I lift them up? Is that readable?
Not really. The autofocuses will not be available. You have to put them on the table. We need to adjust the camera if you want us to read them.
Oh, okay. No. I don't think we need to read them out.
You don't want to read them?
No.
It is an obituary. I mean, I know you.
No, it's just a death notice. It's not an obit. So Grace, Valma Margaret, both things that have the same wording. Late of 61 Stevenson Street, Bundaberg, formerly of Mackay, died peacefully at home, May 23rd, 99. Then widow of Frederick, mother and mother-in-law of all of us, grandmother of those ones, sister and sister-in-law of, just your reallys. A life completed. Relatives and friends of Val are respectfully advised to attend her funeral to be held at the Crematorium Chapel, Cummins Road, today, Tuesday, May the 25th, etc. So, now, I might just do this while I'm on all the death things. This is a little booklet done up by
making ourselves bawl in the corner in the fetal position with all the death.
This is the little booklet that came to from the funeral directors, where they talked about it was basically information about what you have to do and where you go and whatever. It's taking up a lot of space for very little reason, as far as I know. And in here, there are a whole heap of documents which are shown individually, with a selection of documents from the public trustee, Reeve, Valma Margaret and Frederick George Charles. So it's just how much money was spent on doing this, that and the other. This first set is...
Funeral director, the funeral homes take note. These things collect in people's cupboards.
Yeah.
Is this ecologically responsible?
Who knows? So it's all from the public trustee to do with money and how much money there was and how much they charged for it. They charged, looks like about $4,800 to do her things. And that was another one of the same.
Thank you to the public trustee of Queensland.
Yep. Another one, this one, Auntie has some writing of Auntie Fraser, and she was just noting on there what she'd done. But again, that was about Dad telling Mum what was going on. And Freya was the one who did all that sort of stuff, public trustee. So they're important, interesting documents to have, because if you ever want to have a look and see how much the public trustee used to charge.
Mechanics of life and death, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So here's something from the mechanics of life.
As we tick through the registries of our lives.
Happy birthday and love to the 70 from the 79er. So that's a wrapping from a present that Dad gave Mum.
Oh.
And that must have been when she was 70. And that's a card from...
I would expect so.
Flowers, I would say, sent by Freya, because they've spelt Freya Freyer. And it would have been from the bunch of flowers. This is a wrapping also from something from Dad. Lavender and old lace in years, but not in spirit. Happy birthday, Belle, from Fred, 1987. So that'd be 65. But anyway, presents from Dad to Mum were quite precious. He was known to, I think this one could have been just looking at the size of the paper, but he was known to go to Armati's pharmacy that they used to go to for medicines and things that you get, makeup and whatever. And Dad was known to go into Armati's and say, because they were known as a family, most personal, what's she been looking at, what's she talking about, and coming home with her present would be the perfume that she had thought about, that she liked. I remember once it was a makeup, lipstick and a powder compact, because Mum would not have spent that money on herself at that stage because she wasn't working. And Dad did it. His presents were always very thoughtful, and one of the most thoughtful that gives you a good laugh was the year he gave her a 5-pound bag of Epsom salts. Why Epsom salts, you might ask? And the problem was...
The brilliant gift.
It was for the grapefruit tree. It was having trouble grapefruiting.
Oh, well, for that too.
So that was funny. Everybody laughed about it, but it did the trick.
Well, it's interesting. And I mean, these days you'd have to stalk someone's Facebook habits to find out what they wanted as a gift.
I'm not going to read this, but this is a piece of paper that Freya has written on, and it seems to be, it's all about the Raybines. Now, I won't go into who they were, old friends of Mum and Dad, and what they did and how they met and so on. And that's, again, not really part of this presentation, but it needs to live in a folder somewhere. So here's where it lives. Now, if you like to play patience and fancy cards, this piece of paper is At Home with Margaret Sidney. It's from a woman's magazine, and I don't know. The Australian Women's Weekly, March the 28th, 1973. Why has it been kept, you might ask? Because of these things. This is how you play airport patience. And this is the snake patience game. So how to play different sorts of patience by yourself. So Mum got good at playing airport patience. I did learn it at one stage, but I'd have to read the directions again. It's a funny things that you pop away, isn't it?
Hmm.
Oh, with this mic on my neck, I can't
You're
turn
trapped
my head
because
away
you won't clip the other clip on.
Yeah.
Too bad.
Here's another page of Mum's writing of that William Blake poem, and at the bottom she's got written quite a long paragraph about what she believes and why. That's spiritually, I mean. This is an interesting little. Mum was good at writing things.
And we just
I agree with
breeze right by.
and I caught the bug. I write lists of things, but this is a list of family belongings made in 1994, and some a little bit later, to show where things were to go when Mum and Dad weren't with us anymore. Very helpful to see where things came from, with a little bit of history and provenance for some sentimental items. So an instance of that. For instance, she's had some jewellery. So Marcia had been given Grandma's keeper ring. I was given Grandma's wedding ring. Marty was to have the ruby ring given to me by Fred. So, and I think that's the one that actually got stolen. Marty had a break-in and lost some jewellery. So there you go. So it's nice just to see where things may have come from. And it having that list meant that nobody had an argument, and we were allowed to choose what we wanted. Wedding ring. This was some notes that Mum had made for a timeline, 1944 timeline. In January, had an accident on her bike, which she often spoke of to her children. We rode on the flat round North Eaton, and her big event happened down a steep hill at Greenslopes in Brisbane. 23rd of March. Go on.
I also have had a serious bike accident. Twice actually, and yeah, it can be like depending. This is the one that you talked about, where you showed a photo of Valma riding the bicycle?
No, that photo was from that was at North Eaton on the flat.
Yes, but you also mentioned the habit of riding bicycles.
Oh, yes, I did, yeah. Okay, so in March, that we're in 1944. So in January, she fell off her bike. March, she began work in the censorship office in Brisbane. In June, had recently visited North Eaton on a holiday. Mention of her thinking of another job. In November of the year, Val changed jobs, had begun teaching at Manly and doing canteen work. And also in November, she was at Manly And that's just from some notes that Mum made at the behest, I think.
Manly in Sydney.
Sorry?
Manly in Sydney.
No, Manly in Brisbane. Manly on the Bayside, Manly.
Goodness me, there's parts of Brisbane I don't even know.
There you go.
I'm not the only one.
Oh, here's something you do know. Do you know that?
I do.
Right. This is Mum's plan for a lovely quilt that she made for Michelle. The quilt is still in use. It gets an earring. Where is it at the moment? Can you think where it's up? It's in the lounge room being used. And that was about 1990 that was done. I know why there were mice on it. Why was there a cat?
Huh? Because cats and rodents have a fairly interesting relationship.
Yay. Now, Mum was a bit of a star.
Probably because of all the Tom and Jerry that got watched in the house, honestly.
Quite possibly. Mum was a bit of a star at school, always behaved herself and was very, very good. And this is a letter from the state school at Kelvin Grove. And I'll hold it up here. I have to hold it up so I can read it. Dear Mrs. Wright, that's to Val's mother. I'm sure that you are delighted with Val's success in the prevention of cruelty. I know that I am. Can you and Mr. Wright come to school on Friday at 10:30 to see the Minister for Public Instruction present Valma with her special book prize? We shall be so pleased. Yours sincerely, M.J. Garraway, whatever, the head teacher. Very, very flash writing for the head teacher. I don't know anything about the book she might have got. It may or may not have survived.
The prevention of cruelty to what?
Animals, probably.
Ah. Well, the fight continues. We have just had egg changes in Queensland.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. The RSPCA is an older organisation than any prevention of cruelty to kids. Now, I don't know what happened. This is an X-ray. I will open it if Shell thinks it's appropriate.
I think often it's a bit more obvious when it's animals.
The X-rays come from the North Coast Nuclear Medicine, and it's a picture of Mum front and back to see, and you can see where all the cancer had metastasised. Yes, I won't open it. I've looked at it several times. I don't particularly want to look at it again. And this is a little collection of cards and letters that Mum had received about the time of her death. So I just put them out there. That was the letter from the Garraways.
I'd just like to point out you have some very strange stuff, like the nuclear machine. Okay, I mean, all right. Peace, love and light. Yeah. It was popular even in the past.
Yes. Again, that's from Jean Harden, who was the lady that Mum was at Teachers College with. Again, these require, it's not appropriate to do them individually here, but it's just you could sit down with the collection and have a read and see who they all were, where they came from.
Well, I guess we'll just have to do that as directed by our audience.
So there's sympathies. There must have been at the time of her death. Oops, what are you doing stuck on there? Warm and caring thoughts. Somebody at Robertson, whoever that might be. And this last thing I have is 5th 99, not long before Mum died. Dear Mrs. Grace, I haven't actually read this before. I should have done. Here is the anointed cloth you have requested. I'm sorry to hear that you're not well and have prayed for God's miraculous intervention. Well, I'm sorry, it's a bit late for God to do anything. Even by the time you receive this letter, I hope you will be well on the way to recovery. So obviously the person who wrote this never thought, because this is like she's nearly dead.
She had staged.
She had a couple of weeks to live.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
What is the letterhead here?
The letterhead is the Philadelphia Church of God.
Ah.
Okay. if a person, just place this cloth upon your forehead, the one who is sick, and do with my own hands if I could. Or if you prefer, the cloth may be placed directly on the afflicted part of the body. That's interesting because it's still stuck on there. It's been stapled on. I must talk with Freya about that because she'll have an idea of. I don't think it was ever used. I sort of, in a way, sort of hope it wasn't, because if it was going to be used, it would have been taken off beyond the letter.
Guess so.
So, anyway, so all these lovely things, and some of the cards, most of the cards, people have written stuff, which is really, really nice. So, anyway, that's the end of this collection of things I have to show you. And as Shell just said, it's a very eclectic collection, isn't it, Shell, of items when you think about it?
Well, I said that when we started, but I did also say that we'd be falling in the fetal position in the corner with all the deaths and honestly, I internally am, because it is heartrending. A lot of the stuff that you've shown us today is, I guess, quite. It's not sad. It's poignant. But
Yes,
it's
yes.
because it always is when you're dealing with the ends
I
of
don't
life.
find the deaths and talking about people who are dead are upsetting. What I find brings out the emotion in me is what happens in the living times. So anyway, there you go. So the next sessions I'll be looking at Val and Fred's children. So Jeff, me, Marty, and who's that other one?
We'll work it out as we go along.
I'm sure I'll work
really.
it out. Well, she's been my sister for quite a long time.
Indeed.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.